I'm 91 years old now, and when I say that out loud, I pause for a moment. Not because I'm proud of the number and not because I'm afraid of it. It's because age, when you live long enough, stops feeling like a simple count of years and begins to feel like a quiet weight. You don't notice it every day, but it is there, resting on your shoulders, following you wherever you go. I've lived long enough to watch my hands change shape, my fingers stiffen in the cold, and my reflection slowly become someone I had to get to know all over again. But more than anything, I've watched my legs teach me lessons I never asked for. Lessons about patience, about humility, about how independence can slip away slowly, quietly, almost unnoticed, until one day you realize it's gone farther than you thought. When you're young, legs are just legs. They carry you from one place to another without asking for anything in return. You don't thank them, you don't listen to them. You assume they'll always be there, steady, reliable. I did too. I walked fasted for hours without noticing, climbed stairs without holding the railing. I thought that was strength. Now I know strength is something else entirely. I've outlived most of the people who once shared my mornings, my meals, my laughter, friends, neighbors, even family. Time has a way of thinning out a room until you notice how much of life happens quietly, without witnesses. And as the years passed and the faces around me changed, my body became one of the few things that stayed with me, and even that began to change. I remember a trip I took in 1987 when I was in my early 50s. I can still see the calendar in my mind, feel the weight of that year. My husband had already passed by then, and grief had settled into my life in a way I didn't know how to explain to anyone else. I traveled alone to Japan for work. The work itself doesn't matter now. What matters is what stayed with me long after the papers were signed and the meetings ended. One morning, unable to sleep because of the time difference, I went outside just after sunrise. The air was cool, the streets quiet. I wandered into a small neighborhood park, the kind most people walk past without noticing. There I saw a group of older men and women gathered together. Some had gray hair, some had none. They weren't dressed for exercise the way people are now. No bright colors, no equipment, just simple clothes and calm faces. They moved slowly, carefully. They bent their knees, lifted one leg at a time, shifted their weight back and forth as if listening to something only they could hear. No one was trying to impress anyone else. No one was rushing. It felt less like exercise and more like respect for the body they had been given and the years it had carried them through. I stood there for a while watching. I remember thinking it looked peaceful. I remember telling myself I'd think about it later. That word again, later. At that point in my life, I still believed later was guaranteed. I was strong enough then to ignore subtle warnings. My legs carried me through airports, up hotel stairs, across busy streets without complaint. When they felt tired, I rested. When they ached, I shrugged it off. I promised myself that when I finally slowed down, I'd learn how to move more carefully. I told myself that when age demanded it, I would respond. What I didn't understand is that age doesn't ask politely, it waits. Years pass the way they always do, quietly, busily, one responsibility replacing another. I stood for work, I sat for rest, I rushed through errands and collapsed into chairs at night. Movement was something I did to get somewhere else, never something I did for its own sake. When my knees first complained, I told myself it was normal. When balance started to feel slightly unreliable, I blamed the ground, the shoes, the lighting. I adapted instead of paying attention, and without realizing it, I broke that promise I had made to myself in that park in Japan. It wasn't until much later, well into my 70s, that the truth made itself known in ways I couldn't ignore. Standing up from a low chair required a moment of planning. Walking on uneven pavement demanded focus. I noticed myself scanning rooms for handholds. Fear crept in quietly without drama, not panic, just caution, and caution, once it settles into your legs, is hard to shake. That's when the memory of those elders returned to me, not as an image of fitness, but as a way of living. They weren't trying to stay young, they were trying to stay capable, independent, present in their own bodies. What took me decades to understand is this: leg strength after 50 isn't about intensity, it's about continuity. Those people weren't chasing improvement, they were preventing loss. Simple movements repeated gently. Standing and sitting with awareness, lifting one leg while holding onto a bench, bending the knees without forcing them, walking slowly enough to feel each step. They treated their legs like partners, not tools. I tried to change once that understanding settled in. I really did. I told myself I would move every morning, not for long, just enough to remind my body it still belonged to me. Some mornings I followed through, others I didn't. A missed day became two became a week, and soon the habit disappeared under the weight of excuses. I've seen this pattern before. In friendships I meant to nurture, in calls I meant to return, in letters I meant to write. Good intentions don't fail because they're weak. They fail because life is loud and habits are quiet. The regret that comes from this isn't sharp. It doesn't shout. It whispers. It shows up when you hesitate before stepping off a curb, when you choose a chair with arms because you know you'll need help standing, when distances are measured not in blocks but in confidence. I've watched friends my age reach that same point, people who were active, capable, certain they would deal with it later. Later arrived, and it was less forgiving than they expected. You might be listening to this and thinking your legs feel fine, that you walk enough, that this doesn't apply to you yet. I thought that too. What I didn't understand is that strength is built when you don't need it, not when you do. Waiting until movement feels urgent is like trying to save money after you've already spent it. When I think back to that morning in Japan, what stays with me isn't a specific routine. It's the pace, the attention, the way those movements were woven into daily life instead of scheduled around it. They didn't separate exercise from living. Standing up slowly was part of breakfast. Balance was part of conversation. Movement was part of aging, not a reaction to it. I repeated my mistake more than once. After retirement, when my days opened up, after my first real fall scare, when I promised myself I would be more careful. Each time I meant it, and each time distractions found their way back in. Comfort is persuasive. Sitting is easy. Standing requires intention. Regret doesn't come from one big failure. It comes from many small delays. If you're listening to this while scrolling or sitting longer than you plan to, I recognize that moment, the phone in your hand, the quiet thought that you'll move after one more minute. These moments seem harmless, but they accumulate. Strength fades in silence, and it returns the same way. I don't say this to frighten you. Fear fades, awareness lasts. There's a scene I know well now. Early morning light through the window, a quiet room, my phone on the table with messages I'll answer later. I stand up slowly and wait for my balance to settle before I take a step. In that pause, I often think about how much easier this would have been if I had practiced it when it didn't matter. I wish I had learned earlier what those elders already knew, that strength isn't something you achieve and keep forever. It's something you return to gently, patiently, again and again. If there's one thing I hope my years can offer you, it's this simple truth. Don't wait for your legs to demand attention. Give it willingly, today, in small ways, without pressure, without promises you won't keep. Just show up, stand, sit, shift your weight, lift a leg, walk slowly, repeat tomorrow. Not perfectly, just consistently. Before it's late, choose to move with care.